My name's Andrew Koerner. I'm the Chief Winemaker here at Blue Pyrenees, and helping me out tonight is the lovely Tess. So, first thing to say, guys, is we're looking for some interaction tonight. It's the first time we've broadcast live, so welcome to the Blue Pyrenees tasting room for the first time. And it's our first attempt at this, so help us out. Post some comments on the screen just below, and tell us what we're doing well and tell us what we're not doing well. Criticisms are okay. Of course, I'll get you back later. But we're here tonight to taste 5 interesting wines from Blue Pyrenees, a couple of new releases that's never been seen before. So I guess we're imitating what might happen if you came to the winery and went on a tour. We'd normally taste a couple of tanks of wine that haven't been bottled yet. So for those of you who have joined in and purchased a little sample pack, thank you very much for your support. Looking forward to tasting through these with you. Bit of news maybe first from Blue Pyrenees. We've had a tough year like everyone else, and the effects of the virus have certainly been compound in the year, because we had a lot of we had a hot year. We had bushfires, we had smoke, we had lots of worries, and then this thing called coronavirus came along. So we've had a pretty tough year, and I guess the upside is that it's made us all be very inventive. Look what we're doing here. We're doing a tasting online. Who would have thought? So there is some upside, and the good news for you guys out there is that we are opening up our cellar door again Friday week, tomorrow week. So Friday the 5th of June, look forward to seeing some of you come visit again. Let's talk a little bit about Blue Pyrenees before we get stuck into these wines. I know a lot of you do know some facts about Blue Pyrenees, but I think we've got some newies tonight. So just quickly, we've been around since 1963. We were set up by the French company Remy Martin. We were the first joint French-Australian venture in wine. And a pretty historic site here. We reignited this region called the Pyrenees, which is based on the Pyrenees mountain ranges. These pioneering guys from Remy Martin came along and selected this site to initially make brandy, to be fair, but very quickly they realised it was cutting edge, cool climate, great for growing all sorts of grapes, especially white, red and sparkling, and rosé these days. So we do have a French history. We're obviously in Victoria, so we're in central Victoria, and if you looked at the map of Victoria, we're almost in the heart, like right in the centre, but just on the western side of centre, which is why we're classified Western Victoria. But a great little history. Initially, that joint venture ran for 20 years, and then in the 1980s, the French company Remy Martin took entire control of this place, and changed the name at that time too to Blue Pyrenees Estate. It was called Chateau Remy originally, so that's great. Great. I guess visionary change, and then they kept planting more grapes, making more wine, and having a lot more success right through to 2002 when they sold to an Australian ownership. So the latest bit of news is we were sold again last year, but we are still Australian owned. It's an ex-Melbourne guy now living in Canada who's bought us, and we look forward to his input next year. Hello Roger, if you're out there. Okay, what next? We probably start talking about the wines. It would be great, guys, if you do have 5 wine glasses. That's the way to do this. Understand not everyone might have 5 glasses handy, but if you can, scramble and grab 5 glasses. As we go through, we might taste half of it, and then we'll come back to the other half. It just allows you to compare and contrast, and maybe work out which one you like best. So grab those glasses if you can. Give you a minute, and we'll start pouring the first one. The first wine is, in fact, one of the pre-releases I mentioned. It's a 2020 Sauvignon Blanc. So I guess the other bit of news about this vintage is right across the country, it's been a very small one, really low crops. A lot to do with the cool weather in springtime, and then some hot northerlies blowing half the grapes off the vines when they were flowers. Here at Blue Pyrenees, we got a crop that's 50% of our long-term average, so not ideal in terms of tonnes, but the upside is the quality was bloody fantastic. So as intense flavours I've seen in our grapes came in this year. So I was pretty keen to pop a little 2020 into this tasting just so you can see what I'm talking about. So the very first wine we're going to do is 2020 Sauvignon Blanc. I know Tess might have labelled this a Shiraz tasting, but we do have to cleanse our palate with something. So it's the little Sauvignon Blanc. First one there, the only white one you've got tonight. There's the label in the bottle. And let's pour this little sucker into a glass and taste it. If some of you have drunk your wines already, that's okay. You just have to remember what we're talking about. These great little 50ml bottles you get to keep, by the way, so excellent all-round little sample bottles. We use them at Celador for sugar on the tables. So let's have a look at this Sauvignon Blanc. I think you got some tasting notes sent out with these, so you can cheat if you like and read those, or listen preferably. Always when we're tasting wine, have a look at the colour, gives you a few pointers, have a smell. I know everyone's nose is not as big as mine, but let's have a go. And what about the flavour? So most of the impact is in the flavour. So let's have a little drink. Well, I reckon we can all see a bit of passion fruit in that, and that's what I was talking about being really intense. That flavour really jumps out of the glass. It does smell a bit like capsicum, green capsicum, but certainly tastes like a passion fruit. Maybe without the black seeds, if you can imagine that. The passion fruit pulp, and it's a great flavour. It's pretty intense. This is a raw wine, by the way, guys. It's not sure if you looked in the bottle, but it's actually a little bit cloudy, and that's because it's unfinished, so it's unfiltered, unfined, sitting a tank just down there, and we ran some into bottles for you guys tonight. Thanks, Leonie. All right, so please, any comments, any criticisms, any questions? Sauvignon Blanc, it's not just a palate cleanser, I was joking. It's quite a popular fruity white wine. Ours here in the Pyrenees is rather intense from the vintage, as I mentioned, and does have those classic passion fruit, gooseberry, green capsicum characters, and that's its varietal definition. Sauvignon Blanc I like to describe as a bit of a vineyard wine, so give kudos to our vineyard manager, viticulturist Shane Howe. He's the one who's produced the flavour here, and all the winemakers have done have harvested it, crushed it, pressed it, fermented it cool, and not much more. So it is designed to be a simple, fruity, fresh wine. Great with food, and most of our wines are. It's something you'll hear me say through the rest of this tasting. We make medium-bodied red wines, and if you want great big wines, you'll find bigger ones than ours. But if you're looking for something that goes with your meal, you probably won't get much better. All right, so on to the main core topic is Shiraz tonight. The next 4 wines are Shiraz, and pretty keen to get onto this 2017 Shiraz, the varietal Shiraz. I think this is one of the best value wines you'll find around Australia. Our varietal Shiraz sells for anywhere between 18 to 28 basically, and for that sort of price, I think you'll find there's a lot of flavour in here. So please pour your second wine. Join me in having a look, having a sniff, and having a taste. I'll talk a little bit about Shiraz while you're doing that. Shiraz is probably the most popular variety, or definitely is the most popular variety from Australia, is probably the most popular variety from the Pyrenees, although the Cabernet gives it a good run for its money here. But tonight we're focusing on Shiraz, and it's a unique character we have here in our Pyrenees Shiraz, which sets it apart. So once again, we had a French history. A French company set us up. They were able to use their knowledge and select the clones that most suited the climate we had here, which was a very cool cutting-edge climate. These days with a bit of global warming, bit of climate change, we're probably classified medium now, but certainly we're cool climate at the time. And they got the appropriate clones using their knowledge from France. So we've got to remember that about Blue Pyrenees Estate. It's in fact one of the reasons I came here, because so many vineyards in Australia were planted just because that was the next thing to do, plant some red grapes and see how they go. Not so this place. Blue Pyrenees was selected, as I mentioned, by a French company who were looking to make wine. So they didn't just have some land and decide to put grapes on it. They actually hunted around for 3 years, from 1960 to 63, before they actually planted the grapes. So very much designed to make premium quality wine in this place. And a lot of wineries are not set up like that. So it sounds obvious, sounds easy, but no, it's actually true. Our Shiraz clones were, I guess, the best of the Rhone varieties available back then. And we often compare our Shiraz to Rhone. One of the reasons we do that is because it is medium-bodied and not full-bodied. Certainly South Australia makes much bigger, fuller-bodied wines, but we pride ourselves on being medium-bodied but very flavoursome. And hopefully you can see the beautiful colour. We've got that beautiful ruby red, deep ruby red colour in the glass. The smell, definitely something like, I like to say, Chinese 5-spice. That's our regional character coming through. So the Pyrenees has an effect on the flavour. The Pyrenees ranges got a lot of eucalypt trees sitting up there, and these vines breathe the atmosphere where they live, and they reflect that in the wine. It's called terroir for those who like their French terms. It just means sense of place. It's tastes where it comes from. In this case, yeah, I smell cinnamon, cloves, bay leaves, and a lot of those things are in Chinese 5-spice, which is why we say it smells a bit like Chinese 5-spice, as well as the blueberry fruit. You get that red and blueberry fruits coming through. And the flavour, I guess, is also red and blue fruits, but the beautiful spices overlaying over that. And something we have a natural abundance of here in the Pyrenees is a beautiful tannin. So our red wines have tannin through the wine, not just a dump of tannin at the end of the wine. They have a beautiful tannin thread through the wine. It's something we focus on during harvest here to make that tannin really part of the wine and an enjoyable part of the wine, not just something that sucks your cheeks in at the end of the tasting. So let's have a go. Okay, I haven't heard any questions come in yet, Tess.
We haven't, we've got one question so far asking about the little bottles that we've got here and whether or not those are available as a sample pack. Yes, they are. These ones sold out pretty quickly. I'm sorry, Claire, thanks for asking. We'll definitely do this again, and if you're interested, please do jump on our mailing list at our website, and we can keep you informed about the next round of tasting wines that we do, and certainly you'll be able to purchase a sample pack in the future. Yes,
aren't they cool little bottles? Sorry, Claire, you got to get in early. This we made up 55 sample packs, and they all went out pretty quick. Unfortunately, the last 8 that went out to Queensland may not have made it, guys. We got a message today saying may not have made it. So I hope you're still watching online, and you can taste through when the wines get there. Please enjoy. Yes, the bottles are cool, and as I said, you get to keep them. And yes, we've got lots more, and yes, we'll be doing it again. So thanks, Claire. Let's move on to the next wine. So it is the Section 1 Shiraz, 2017 Section 1 Shiraz. And let's pop that into your glass now. So this is obviously the same vintage as the 2017 Shiraz we just tried. It's clearly a different wine, and we've done that through winemaking. So the different wines made from the same vintage and the same variety, very much down to winemaking. Starts in the vineyard, where we look at the vineyard, and we can most years tell which batches of grape are going to deliver the best results. But then very much the winemaking keeps that wine separate, and gets a bit more royal treatment. So the difference between the 2017 Shiraz we just tasted and this one, the main differences are, the first one was a combination of different blocks out in our vineyard. By the way, you notice that that word estate in our name, and all of these wines you're tasting are estate wines. What that means is they're grown in the vineyard just out behind me here. We grow the grapes, we make the wine, we bottle the wine, everything's done on site here. Estate made, estate grown, estate bottled, estate drunk. Oh, hang on, we're not doing that bit yet. Okay, so Section 1 Shiraz is actually our oldest block of vines, Shiraz wines on the property, just inside the front gate for those who've been here. And the older the vines get, the more mature the vines, the more stable they are, and so we get variable conditions, especially these recent years. We get ups and downs, and those old vines, with their store of carbohydrate, the trunks are very good at weathering those up and down conditions. Young vines tend to be a bit more reactive, a bit like your teenagers, you know, over dramatic. So if it's a bit dry, they sook, and if it's a bit wet, they sook. And hi girls. So Section 1 Shiraz is, you're going to see, is a little bit bigger bodied than Shiraz. We just tasted a little bit more intense. The winemaking I mentioned meant that it's had a bit longer on the skin, so you'll see a bit more tannin. It's also had a bit more new oak barrels. So just around, in that first wine, 5% of the barrels were, 5 to 10 are new barrels. With this second wine, Section 1 Shiraz, actually 40% of the barrels are new. So you're going to see a bit more oak influence. And the oak characters you'll get are probably vanilla and maybe a bit of chocolate and sometimes cedar wood. That's going to be a bit more intense, and the whole body is going to be a bit bigger. So let's have a little go at this one.
Andrew, should we have a little bit of a chat about this particular line? I know for both you and I, it's one of our favourites, and certainly over the past, I think we've made 5 vintages. It's picked up a couple of trophies multiple times. So this particular vintage is certainly one of those ones that's won some big awards. Would you just give us a quick mention about that?
Yes, awards. Thanks, Tess. I was coming around to it. We do win our fair share of awards here at Blue Pyrenees, and just skipping back to the Shiraz wine, that actually won a pretty good award we're really proud of. So I'll just cover that one off first before I get to your question. The Shiraz actually was awarded in December last year a blue gold and a top 100 status in the Sydney International Wine Competition. We really like that show. We do quite well on that show, and it's different from all the other wine shows. The wines are actually judged with food. So our 2017 Shiraz, we're talking a $20 wine here, gets blue gold, which is top status, and then it got in the top 100. For those who don't know, that a wine show like that would probably have 2,000 to 3,000 entries, so the top 100 is pretty good status, and it makes that wine terrific value, of course. And the thing I like about that wine show is they actually publish the food that they tasted it with. So if anyone is interested in why that got a blue gold top 100, have a look at the website and you'll see it. Click the wine and it'll tell you the food they tasted it with, and by memory it was duck breast, and I reckon, I'm sure that Chinese fly spice was in there somewhere, but a terrific award and makes that tremendous value. Back to the Section 1 Shiraz, thanks Tess, yes, this one's really highly awarded, and I guess 3 of the awards, we've only made 5 vintages, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 5 vintages of Section 1 Shiraz. It used to be called Reserve Shiraz before that, but we changed the label, changed the name, 2013 vintage, and bang, won a big trophy. Best Victorian Shiraz at the wine challenge, at the Shiraz Wine Challenge, and the following vintage, 2014, also won the Best Victorian Shiraz trophy, and then lo and behold, the one you've just tasted there, the 2017 Section 1 Shiraz, also again won that same trophy, Best Victorian Shiraz at the Shiraz Challenge each year. So 3 out of 5 vintages have won Best Victorian Shiraz. Got a question there?
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions about oak treatment. Perhaps we can have a chat about each of the wines and the type of oak that they spend time in. Certainly it varies a little bit from wine to wine.
Yeah, good question. Oak treatment does vary. It's one of the winemaker's tools. How much, how little. So the first Shiraz had very little. Most of the wine spent its time in barrels, but the barrels are all very old, so they've been used a couple of times for the reserve wines. So they're really just vessels that allow a bit of oxygen in, so they don't have a lot of effect on the flavour. And the reason the winemakers mention the amount of new oak is because the new oak barrels do have a big effect on the flavour. So the second wine we tasted was around about 40% new oak, and that's where that bigger flavour hit comes from. Also spends 2 whole years in the barrel. So the first wine, 18 months, second wine, 24 months. So that extra time, an extra amount of new oak delivers a lot more of the oak flavours you can taste there, which I mentioned were vanilla and cedar wood. Another question?
And just another question before we move on to the next wine. We've just got a question about cellaring. What do you recommend in terms of laying these wines down?
Cellaring, another classic question. And I've got to say, thanks to screw caps, we very safely say all of our red wines are going to age 10 years, no problem. And if you can manage to do that, at least get 5, guys. If you can get 5 years into your cellar, you'll love it. You'll be really, really well rewarded. The tannins soften, the flavours come out, and you get these things we call secondary wine characters, which come from the wine. Spending a bit of time, the fruit dies down a bit, and you get secondary complex characters. You get things like cedar box and tobacco leaves and mushroom and forest floor and all these wonderful wine wanky terms that we use. They all come out generally with a bit of time. It's really worth doing if you can. No problems getting 10 years in all our red wines. At the top end, we usually say 20 safely. But one of the reasons we can do that safely is because screw caps seal better than corks and more consistent than corks. So we don't have to worry about wines being prematurely oxidised or cork tainted. So we can safely say, 10 years for everyone. Another question, yeah?
And just got a question to clarify whether the oak's French or American.
That's a good question. I didn't mention that because we use both, so it does vary a bit. Traditionally, Blue Pyrenees, we use more French than American. However, in the Shiraz, which we are tasting tonight, we definitely do use American oak, and it's slid up a little bit over the years. I would say, I'm going to break this in the new oak. We're using roughly 50% French and 50% American. Of the older oak, it's going to be about 80% French. So it's French dominant, but the American certainly plays its part. For those who don't know the barrels, American oak is a sweeter, bolder flavour, and the French oak is more subtle but gives you more tannin, more body. So that's a rough way of saying it. Okay.
And then just one more cellaring question. About the section one specifically, what the recommendations are for that specific one. We chatted a bit about the first Shiraz, but the section one is a little bit different.
The 17 section 1 Shiraz, again, no problem cellaring for 10 years. I would love you to get 5 years into that. So that's basically the same. It is a little bit fuller body. It probably will go further. We're just going to say what's safe, not safe. I love telling a story here when I first came to Blue Pyrenees. And the oldest wine we had was a 1982 Estate Red, and I found the winemaker's tasting note, and it said should age 10 years. And we had that wine only 4 or 5 years ago. It's still great, so certainly did a lot better than 10. So I'm saying 10, but that's conservative. That section 1 Shiraz, if you can lie that down for 20 years, good on you. Have a go at it. I'd suggest those of my vintage and older, maybe don't do that. You may not, your kids will get the benefit, not you. Okay, another question?
And just another question about the use of Viognier in the section 1 Shiraz and whether these are whole berries or skins.
Okay, well that's a high level winemaking question. Viognier in Shiraz is very common these days in Australia. Certainly the idea came from the Rhone Valley in France, particularly northern Rhone. The majority Shiraz wines, but they use a bit of Viognier. Aussies, we got into this about, say 10, 15 years ago. And when I first came to Blue Pyrenees, that's 16 years ago now, we experimented with it straight away, and we initially used wine, but these days, like most places, we've refined it, and we certainly do use whole grapes, and I should say more grape skins. So quite often with the Viognier, what we'll do is we'll crush it, do a drain, so just drain some of the juice away to use for white wine, and then put the rest of the juice and the skins in with the Shiraz. So that's called co-fermentation, when you put the skins or the whole berries in with the Shiraz berries in the ferment. So yes, we do it that way, and these days we started around 5%. These days we've refined it down to between 1 and 2%. So I think you'll see on the tasting notes there, both of those Shirazes we've just tried have 1%, which is probably rounded down from 1.2 or 1.3. Sounds very minor, but the Viognier has a really big effect, especially when it's co-fermented like that. So really what it does is bring out that lovely spice character, and so that's something we've learned from the French, and we apply very effectively here. Good question. All right, let's move on to the fourth wine. So this is the 2018 Section 1 Shiraz. This is another pre-release. Let's pour this one into your glass now. And this wine is bottled, but only just. It was bottled a little earlier this year. So the 2018 vintage, I haven't talked about the vintages yet. That was my next step. Let's just recap. 2017 vintage was cool. It's the last time we had good rains, and we even had a flooding spring, which gave us big canopies, big crops, and that means it took a long time to ripen up. That gave us very elegant, wines that look very cool climate. 18, a little bit warmer, and so we've got good soil moisture from 17. We move on to 18, we get a much warmer year, and what we've got is very powerful wine. So when you taste this one, guys, don't get a shock, because it's going to be a fair bit fuller bodied. So the wines, the two wines we just tasted, I would say fit the category medium bodied exactly. And when I mentioned that show award, the Sydney International Wine Competition Award judged with food, that was put into the medium bodied Shiraz category. However, I think this 2018 Section 1 Shiraz, you could probably sneak into the full bodied character. So that just full bodied category, and that just means it's a little riper, it ripened a little faster, it's a little more intense. The crops are a bit lower than 17, and so we've got a lot of natural tannin. I mentioned that earlier, but one of the beauties of the Pyrenees grapes is they don't crop a lot. They don't get big berries, so we've got a lot of skin per tonne of grapes, and that's where the tannin and colour comes from. So that's why we've got such beautiful colour. Look at that. Love it. That's purple. That's verging on black. Winemakers love to see that black colour, that really deep purple, deep black colour. We know that's the first sign of a great wine, and its intensity. So great colour. Let's have a sniff. This is the last one. The last one I saw a lot of that spice. The first thing I smelled was that Chinese fire spice. This one, I'm just smelling black fruit. It's got big blackberry, big boysenberry, something of the purple or black fruits. Pretty intense, really jumping out the glass. And yes, there's some oak there too. You can smell a bit of toasty oak and a little bit of that vanillin character from the oak coming through. But wow, it's powerful. So let's have a little taste. Yeah, so that's medium to full bodied. It's still very young. It's more tannic. Who was asking a question about age and Tess? What was her name?
Excuse me a moment. I'll just.
That's okay. I was going to say if we reckon the last one's going to last 10 years, and this one's definitely 20 years. You can just taste the power in that and the youthfulness in it, and you know it's going to get better. And in fact, I'll be looking for some more secondary characters in this one. I really want to lie this one down. Yes?
So that question was from Annette, and Annette's got a second question asking, what is your favourite food to have with your Shiraz? Perhaps this might be a bit different from wine to wine, but what's a go-to for you, Andrew?
Yeah, thanks, Annette. That's a good question. My favourite food with Shiraz, I do have this debate with our sales manager, Simon, sometimes. He thinks it's beef, I think it's lamb, And I tell you why, because that lamb fat character with a lot of people cook it with a bit of rosemary, and I do see rosemary in the herby characters in our wines. So yeah, we often have that debate, and I think we've tried it with both many times, and I'm not sure the answer's clear. I can't remember what the answer was, but it was a good night anyway. So look, I tend to go towards lamb. That's I think Shiraz is quite strong in its characters, and so is lamb. Duck also, that was the one mentioned at the Sydney International Wine Show. 5-spice duck, perfect match for our Shiraz. So don't worry about the beef. Go for the duck or the lamb. Okay, so the Section 1 Shiraz 18, the one we've just poured, obviously from that same block. The majority of it comes from that same Section 1, the oldest grapevines. The main difference here being it's a year younger. You can taste the youthfulness, and you can taste the power in it. So hope you like that as a pre-release. If any of you get to visit the winery later this year, it may well be out. So the 17 Section 1's probably going to be around for another couple of months at best. And then we'll be on to the 18. So we're looking forward to getting this into the stores and into the wine shows and into your cellar. This one's definitely going to age well. So buy up. Let's move on to the last wine.
So we've got a couple of questions from Nolene regarding some non-Shiraz wines, which we'll get to. Thanks for your patience, Nolene. Lynn's asking about the influence of the soil on the wine.
Right.
We talked a little bit about terroir earlier, but perhaps could we talk about the soil?
Yes.
Specifically?
Soil it's a great question. It's a complex question, and soil is obviously around the roots of the vine, so it's not a direct correlation, but it does definitely have an influence. So it's a harder one to explain. There's some encyclopedic books on this topic. One called Terroir, which I think I'm still reading. I got it 20 years ago. It's really complex, and your soil does have an effect. But I guess the number one thing here in the Pyrenees is to say the soils are mean, and when I say mean, I mean they're not very fertile. So it's all to do with that natural tannin I mentioned. The soils being mean, a lot of rock, and if you can imagine, it's not very fertile. So fertile soils are those nice deep red and brown loams that you see driving around. Our soils are quite white looking, a lot of rock, and not a lot of fertility, and that's definitely something the French seek, and that is that advantage I mentioned earlier about having the French set this place up, that they picked a site like this. They looked for mean soils. In fact, the story we got from the original selection of this site was they looked for, they were looking for rocky soils, and of course there was no such thing as a rocky soil map. So back in the 1960s they did something quite pioneering, and they grabbed a gold mining map of Australia, because they knew gold mines follow the same sort of calcified sort of rocky soils, and so they looked at a gold mining map and then also got a climatic map and overlaid the two. So they got the coolest edge of where you could grow viticulture, grapes at the time, grapevines at the time, and then this gold mining map overlaid it, and this is one of the two intersections they came up with. So quite pioneering. Great question about the soil. The main effect is that it devigorates the vines. They can't grow too much, so we get small crops, but we get great intensity of characters. And if you're trying to make great wine, which that's what they were, not trying to just make lots of wine, they were trying to make great wine. That's what you look for. Great, very low, mean soils. There's other things like, I guess the salt, the salinity of the soil is very important, but we can adjust that. The salt level is very important, especially in Australia, can be very high. Lots of other characters that affect your vines, but devigoration is the number one thing in the Pyrenees. Good question. Right, so back to the last wine, which is our Richardson Shiraz. Pour that into the glass. 2017 Richardson Shiraz. Another award winner. Another question there, Tess.
Well, just while you're pouring 17 Richardson, Andrew, we've got a comment from Anthony saying that he's having it with mushroom soup and it's a perfect marriage. So that's a good one, Anthony. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. Mushroom soup is good, and I often see mushroom in our wines, and I see that as a connection to the Rhone. I mentioned how some of our Shiraz wines particularly have a similarity to the wines of Northern Rhone Valley in France. And mushroom is one of those characters that I see in our wines, especially with a little bit of age, that do remind me of Rhone. So yeah, great comment. Okay, so the Richardson Shiraz is an interesting series for us, named after a very influential guy in the industry called Colin Richardson, who passed on back in the year 2000. Fantastic influence on many people in the wine street, particularly journalists, and fondly remembered. Big guy, loved his wine, loved his food, loved life, lived hard, died young. So yeah, put in a good one. And the wines are named after him, and we don't necessarily look for the biggest wine. We look for the most characterful wine each year. So we select the reserve batches first, and then we pick the one that we feel has got the most varietal and regional character. So the Pyrenees character and the Shiraz character, whatever one's exemplifying that the most, is what we tend to pick for the Richardson. This one, classic. Yeah, it does have mushroom, does have a bit of that rosemary character I mentioned. I love that rosemary herb character. Definitely goes with lamb, Simon. And I think you'll find again we've gone back to 17 vintage and back to medium bodied. So we'll taste. Yeah, smooth. I love it when people make that comment after tasting our wine. But smooth is a good compliment. It's it's also dangerous because sometimes it means you end up drinking the bottle. Not that we condone that. But wines are made to drink and not just to sip. So that's part of our philosophy here, is making the wines smooth enough, soft enough to consume a few glasses. Another question?
And is this wine always under cork? We've got a comment about the different closure that we've got here on this one.
Yeah, great. So that is an interesting point. The Richardson wine is bottled under cork, and I probably did disc corks before, but screw caps are an evolution and an improvement in consistency. Great corks are still very great closures. The issue was we didn't always get great corks. But these days, this wine is bottled in cork, you're right. These days, the cork is a treated cork. So we now have the technology to remove the compounds in cork, which is the bark of the cork tree, which created all the problems, all the TCA, the corked wine problems. So these are called diam corks. They are, we love them. I've never had a corked wine using them yet, and we also have far less oxidation problems using them. So yes, they are corks, and that's part of this super premium category. And certainly Australia's quite open to screw caps, but other countries not so much. If you sell to China and you sell to USA, you'll find that they still much prefer their corks over their screw caps. They only associate them with cheap screw caps with cheap wine. So we still do use cork. We love the diam corks, and that's a nice compromise and a good question. Thank you. Right, so let's get back to that last wine again, and then we might just do a little comparison of the vintages. Love that mushroom character. I think that's a beautiful part of the wine, and if you can see multiple characters in wine, that's a compliment to the winemaking team, because we do, there's easy ways to make wine. You can just follow a recipe like you do cooking. The harder way to make wine is to use lots of different ways of making the wine and then blend those bits together, or practice those different ways on the one batch. Each method that we use gives us a different character, and that makes the wine more complex. That's what you want to be drinking at the end of the night, is a complex wine, not a simple fruity one. Another question?
Lynn has asked if there's more American oak in this wine. What's going on in terms of
yeah, thanks Lynn, good question. More American oak. Yeah, you got me on that one. I'd have to look up the actual composition of the barrels that went into it, but it is slightly more new oak than the Section 1 Shirazes. The last two wines I mentioned were 40% new oak. This Richardson Shiraz is each year between 50 and 60% new oak, and I think it was 60% in 2017, this one we're tasting. More American than previous vintages. Oh, maybe more than previous vintages of Richardson Shiraz, yes. Not more than the Section 1 Shiraz though. So if you can still got some wine in your glasses and you can compare the Section 1 Shiraz 17 to the Richardson Shiraz 17. They both got substantial amounts of oak. You can taste the vanilla, you can taste the cedar. No, I'm not going with you, Lynn. I reckon there's more American in the Section 1 and more French in the Richardson. Sorry. Okay, how are we going for criticisms? Any of those?
Judy's on her way out, unfortunately, because we skipped her question. So we might just quickly go back to that one.
Yeah,
talking about the effect of COVID on wine processing this year.
Yeah, well, that's a very topical question. So, coronavirus effect on the winemaking this year, we were, when it all started happening, we were in the middle of harvest, it already started. We were all very worried about what was going to be the rule of law, if you like. And I have to say, Australia has done very well. Some countries, I know South Africa, were forced to stop. So halfway through their harvest, they had to stop harvesting and stop working basically and all go home. And so all of their ferments, all of their grapes, all the wine they were making all went off. They weren't able to finish it off. So what a terrible situation that was for them. Luckily, our government was reasonably sensible about it, and they understood that agriculture had to keep happening, and winemaking at the start is harvesting grapes. Growing and harvesting grapes certainly is agriculture. So we were allowed to continue processing. Having said that, we were worried because the rules were changing every week for a while, and we were worried that we could get shut down. So in the end, the only difference this year, we made the last of the Cabernet Sauvignon, which comes in last, we probably got in a little bit quicker than what we would have, to be honest. If there was no virus around, we may have left that last bit of Cabernet out a bit longer to ripen up a bit more. We weren't taking any chances in case the rules were changing, so we got that in. So that was really the only effect on the harvest. The effect on the sales, however, are much more hurtful, unfortunately. So we're doing things like Facebook live tastings to help us overcome it.
So for those that are watching and have enjoyed the wines, Andrew, would you like to talk a little bit about the offer that we've got on the website, talking about how you can buy the wines, and also the wines that we're tasting here, which ones you can actually get in stores and which ones you are only available directly from us?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tess. And yes, we do have an offer on our Shiraz at the moment, and we, like many wineries, have looked at our direct-to-customer, direct-to-consumer sales much more closely lately, and put in a couple of offers and put out a couple of offers, and they've been quite successful. Particularly the rosé offer, which coincided with a great trophy at Dan Murphy's, and so that was very successful. The current offer just gone out last week is if you guys buy 5 bottles of the Shiraz, so the first Shiraz we tasted, the second wine, 2017 Shiraz, great value wine on its own. You buy 5 bottles of that, we'll throw in a free bottle of the 2017 Section 1 Shiraz. So the third wine we tasted tonight, the wine right next to it. Really, and so we want you to taste the difference. We want you to do what we did tonight and try those wines against each other and see the difference in the winemaking and the style. So that's our current offer. And if you're a wine club member, of course, we have a wine club. It's called the Single Vineyard Wine Club, and it is definitely the way to buy wine. That's really, really good value. And a quick hello to all our Single Vineyard Wine Club members out there watching. You're probably the reason I'm still here at Blue Pyrenees, to be honest, because with the growth of our wine club the last few years, it's enabled us the winemakers, to have a little experiment, try a few things each year, and actually sell that experiment or sell that trial. So some of you have been around following us for a few years would know we released a Cabernet Franc with great success. That one's called the Pomme. We released a Malbec, also very successful. Small volumes, we don't have much of them, so they're only available through the wine club. And the Pinot Noir, had some great fun hand picking the Pinot Noir with our wine club last year. That's now a wine available for sale through our wine club online on the website. So yes, we have an offer on the Shiraz that we've tasted tonight. That is truly good value. So jump online, have a look at that. Don't forget some of these other smaller batch wines I mentioned. So we have we have a Riesling these days. We have a wine called UBF, which is our first ever experiment with an orange wine, as it's called, a skin contact white wine, probably more accurately. So yeah, lots of interesting wines at the wine club. Make sure you get online, have a look at that. Hopefully, all of you who supported us and bought this tasting pack tonight, we've got a little wine club brochure in there. If you're not in the wine club, have a look at it, because it truly is the way to go. 25% off, already good prices. That Shiraz is insane value. And at the wine club, Tess, how much do we pay for the varietal Shiraz?
Yeah, so the varietal Shiraz is $16.50 a bottle, and this pack that we've been talking about tonight is $85 for wine club members, or $110 for everybody else.
Yeah, so $85 wine club members for that Shiraz offer. That's insane. A free bottle of Section 1 Shiraz, great value.
So we might wrap it up there, Andrew. Those that have asked questions that we haven't answered, we'll jump in the comment section and reply to you each individually. Tyrone's just asked whether we will do a similar live tasting for the Cabernet range. So as we mentioned earlier, anyone that's interested in getting in next time, jump on the mailing list and you'll find out about it. But Andrew, will we do Cabernet next? Yeah, great idea. Good suggestion. Let's lock it in sometime next month, shall we? As I mentioned, our cellar door is opening tomorrow week, Friday the 5th, but we are restricted with how many people can come inside at once. It's only 20 people initially, hopefully going up to 50 shortly after that, and hopefully bigger. But I think online sales and direct-to-customer and online tasting such as this are here to stay. So thanks for your support. Yes, we'd love to do Cabernet next month, and we'll do a similar offer, I'm sure, with buy Cabernet and get a free bottle of our Estate Red, our most famous Cabernet blend wine. And it's if those who are asking about wines that age well, have a look at our Estate Red. Absolutely great track record of aging well. So let's wrap it up there, Tess. It's thanks very much for joining in and bothering to listen to me rabbit on for half an hour or so. Looking at some of the comments, thank you for participating. Talbot Providor, I'm going home to eat some of your food shortly, so thank you. Let's do it all again. Really enjoyed this. This is our tasting room. It's actually a fairly new building, and it's the first time anyone from outside's been in it. So thanks for joining. Have a great night, and see you next time.